Look, before we get into this absolute mess in Cleveland, I need your help for just 10 seconds. We're pushing hard to hit 1,000 subscribers, and every single person watching this makes a real difference. If you're getting something out of these breakdowns, just tap that subscribe button right now. It takes 2 seconds and keeps this channel alive. Alright, let's get into it. Pat McAfee just went nuclear on the Cleveland Browns, and honestly, he's not wrong. What's happening with Dillon Gabriel and Shedeur Sanders isn't just a quarterback controversy, it's a complete exposure of how dysfunctional this organization really is. Kevin Stefanski made a decision that doesn't make sense to anyone who's actually watching these guys play, and McAfee called it exactly what it is: sabotage. Not the intentional kind where someone's actively trying to destroy a player's career, but the kind that happens when coaches get so locked into their own philosophies that they can't see what's right in front of them. Dillon Gabriel is the starter now, or at least he's the guy getting first team reps, and the entire football world is looking at this situation wondering what Cleveland is thinking. This isn't about Gabriel being a bad quarterback. He's not. He's a capable backup who understands offensive systems and won't make catastrophic mistakes. But that's exactly the problem. Cleveland doesn't need capable right now. They need explosive. They need someone who can actually threaten defenses and make plays when the structure breaks down. They have that guy in their building, and he's watching from the sideline while Gabriel checks down on 3rd and long. Pat McAfee didn't just casually mention this on his show. He dedicated serious time to breaking down why this decision makes zero sense from a football perspective. He had sources, real information from people inside that Browns facility, and what he revealed should terrify Cleveland fans. The coaching staff apparently decided on Gabriel before training camp even started. They watched both quarterbacks, saw what everyone else saw, which is that Shedeur Sanders has more talent and more upside, and they picked Gabriel anyway because he fits what Stefanski wants in a quarterback: conservative, predictable, safe. That word keeps coming up when you talk about Stefanski's philosophy: safe. He wants to know exactly what's going to happen on every play. He scripts everything down to the smallest detail. He values execution over creativity, which can work if you have elite talent at every single position. But Cleveland doesn't have that. They have a great defense and some offensive pieces, but they need their quarterback to create advantages, not just avoid disadvantages. Gabriel can't do that. He's shown in every opportunity he's gotten that he plays scared, checking down immediately, refusing to push the ball downfield, hoping his defense keeps things close enough that maybe they steal a game. The Vikings game was the perfect example of everything wrong with Gabriel as a starting quarterback. 19 completions, 190 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. On paper, that looks fine, but if you actually watched that game, you saw a quarterback who was terrified to attack downfield. 3 completions on 10 attempts when throwing beyond 10 yards. That's not being smart with the football. That's being scared of the football. His quarterback rating reflected exactly what everyone saw. He was bad, not just mediocre or struggling, actually bad in the ways that matter for winning football games. Minnesota came in with a top 10 defense, but they didn't need to play like a top 10 defense because Gabriel never challenged them. They could sit on short routes, load the box against Cleveland's run game, and trust that Gabriel wasn't going to beat them vertically. That's a death sentence in the NFL. You need defenses to respect your ability to attack every level of the field. Otherwise, they just compress everything, take away your underneath stuff, and dare you to throw over the top. Gabriel wouldn't take that dare. He checked down, played it safe, and watched his team lose because he wasn't willing to take chances when chances were absolutely necessary. McAfee pointed out something that should have every Browns fan furious. There were apparently scouts and coaches in that building who evaluated both quarterbacks and believed Sanders was better. Not just more talented in some abstract future sense, but better right now, giving Cleveland the best chance to win football games in the present. Their opinions didn't matter because Stefanski had already made his decision. That's not how functional organizations work. That's how dysfunctional organizations pretend to work, while everyone inside knows the real story and leaks it to media members who will actually report the truth. Think about what that means for team culture. You have position coaches and scouts who study quarterbacks for a living, who watch every practice rep, who break down film and understand what translates to game day success. They tell the head coach that Sanders gives them a better chance to win, and Stefanski essentially says their evaluation doesn't matter because he's already decided Gabriel is his guy. How are those coaches and scouts supposed to feel? How are they supposed to trust that their input matters on anything else when it clearly didn't matter on the most important decision the franchise makes? The height thing with Gabriel is real, and people need to stop pretending it doesn't matter. He's listed at 5'11.25", which probably means he's actually shorter when you account for the usual height inflation that happens with NFL measurements. When you have defensive linemen who are 6'5" getting their hands up in passing lanes, that height disadvantage shows up constantly. Drew Brees succeeded at a similar height, but Brees had maybe the quickest release in NFL history and processing speed that compensated for his physical limitations. Russell Wilson succeeded, but Wilson was one of the most elusive scramblers ever and could extend plays until receivers broke open downfield. Gabriel doesn't have those compensating skills. He's not exceptionally quick with his release. He's not a dynamic athlete who can create outside structure. He's a pocket passer who happens to be shorter than ideal for a pocket passer, which creates fundamental problems. Passes batted down at the line of scrimmage. Throws that can't be attempted because he literally cannot see over the defensive front. Windows that look open from the sideline but are actually closed from his sightline. These aren't minor issues that good coaching can fix. They're physical limitations that affect his ability to function in an NFL offense at a high level. Now compare that to Shedeur Sanders, who also isn't particularly tall but plays with completely different energy and confidence. He has that quality where defensive players actually have to respect his ability to hurt them. He'll stand in the pocket and deliver throws while knowing he's about to get destroyed. He'll make off-platform throws when protection breaks down. He has the arm strength to make every throw required in a modern NFL offense. But more than the physical tools, he has the mindset that you simply cannot teach. He believes he's the best player on the field every single time he steps out there. That confidence is contagious in ways that Gabriel's caution will never be. Pat McAfee's revelation about the front office adds another layer to this disaster. Ownership apparently saw the marketing value in Shedeur Sanders immediately. The son of Dillon playing in the NFL, bringing that primetime energy to a city that's desperate for something to believe in. Jersey sales would explode. Ticket sales would spike. Media attention would be constant. From a pure business perspective, Sanders as the face of the franchise made complete sense. But Stefanski doesn't answer to the marketing department. He answers to his own philosophy about how football should be played, and Sanders doesn't fit that philosophy. So we have this impossible situation where ownership wants one thing, coaching staff wants another, and nobody's actually focused on what gives Cleveland the best chance to win football games. That disconnect between ownership and coaching is organizational cancer. It creates situations where coaches feel like they have to defend every decision, where ownership starts questioning whether the staff is actually trying to win or just trying to protect their jobs, where players sense the tension and start choosing sides. Nobody wins when that's happening. The franchise splinters into competing interests instead of functioning as a unified organization with shared goals. You can see it already starting in Cleveland. Anonymous sources talking to reporters, information leaking out that should stay internal, players giving carefully worded answers in interviews that suggest they're not thrilled with what's happening. The third down efficiency against Minnesota was catastrophic and perfectly shows everything wrong with Gabriel. 0 for 4 on third downs in the fourth quarter when the game was close and Cleveland desperately needed to extend drives. 0 for 4. On at least 2 of those plays, there were opportunities to attack downfield, to give playmakers a chance to win one-on-one matchups, to take a shot and see if you can convert. Gabriel didn't even attempt those throws. He checked down immediately, took the safe option, and let the drive die. That's fine if you're a backup trying to survive a few games while your starter heals. That's not fine if you're supposedly the future of the franchise. Imagine Shedeur Sanders in those same situations, based on everything we know about him, based on his college tape, based on how he performed in pressure situations at Colorado under more media scrutiny than most NFL quarterbacks face. He's taking those shots. Maybe they work, maybe they don't, but at least there's a chance. At least the defense has to respect the possibility that Cleveland might actually try to win the game instead of just hoping the other team makes mistakes. That aggression matters. It changes how defenses play you. It creates opportunities even on plays where you don't complete the aggressive throw because defenses start playing honest instead of sitting on everything underneath. McAfee doubled down the next day, which tells you everything about his confidence in the sources he had. He's not someone who reports rumors or speculation just to generate content. When he commits to a story this explosive, he has multiple people confirming details. He basically said the Browns organization is operating with competing philosophies right now. Some people believe Gabriel needs to be protected and developed slowly. Others think that's wasting valuable time when the team is good enough to compete right now with better quarterback play. That philosophical divide is destroying any chance Cleveland has of maximizing their window with this roster. You can't develop a young quarterback properly when half the building wants him playing and half wants him sitting. You can't build offensive chemistry when players don't know who their quarterback will be 3 weeks from now. You can't establish an identity when the coaching staff and front office aren't aligned on the most important position in football. It's organizational malpractice disguised as patience and process. Browns fans have heard about processes for 20 years. They're tired of processes. They want results. They want to feel excited about Sundays instead of dreading watching their team try not to lose by too much. The Baker Mayfield comparison is unavoidable here. Remember when Tyrod Taylor was starting in Cleveland, playing it safe, keeping games close, but never really threatening to take over. Then Taylor got hurt in a weird incident before a game. Baker came in and immediately transformed the entire energy of that franchise. Cleveland went from boring and predictable to electric and must-watch television in one game. The city rallied behind Baker because he represented something they hadn't seen in decades: genuine confidence and swagger at the quarterback position, someone who believed they belonged and played like it. Now Cleveland fans are watching the reverse happen in real time. They have a quarterback with swagger and confidence sitting on the bench while a game manager takes snaps and plays scared. They're being told to trust the evaluation, trust the process, trust that Stefanski knows what he's doing. But Browns fans don't trust processes anymore. They've been sold processes their entire lives as fans, and it's led to nothing but disappointment and wasted rosters. They want someone to just make a bold decision and live with the results instead of playing it safe and wondering what could have been. Gabriel might be perfectly adequate as a backup quarterback in this league. He might start games occasionally and not embarrass himself. He might be exactly what some rebuilding team needs in a few years when they're just trying to evaluate their roster and aren't worried about winning immediately. But he's not the answer in Cleveland, not when there's a guy sitting right there who brings everything this franchise actually needs: energy, confidence, playmaking ability, willingness to take chances when the game is on the line. Those qualities matter more than perfect footwork or memorizing every detail of the playbook. Shedeur Sanders isn't perfect either. Nobody's claiming he is. He'll probably throw some bad interceptions. He'll make rookie mistakes. He might struggle early while adjusting to NFL speed and complexity, but at least he'd give Cleveland something to believe in. At least he'd make Sundays exciting instead of stressful. At least he'd inject some life into an organization that's been dead inside for way too long. And at least he'd show that the Browns are finally willing to take a real chance on someone with genuine upside instead of settling for safe mediocrity that gets you 8 wins and another early offseason. The locker room dynamics matter here more than people realize. Veterans who have been in the league for years can tell immediately when something is off. They watch practice every day. They see who's making throws, who's commanding the huddle, who teammates actually believe in when things get tough. And when those veterans look at the depth chart and see the wrong guy starting, it creates doubt. Not rebellion or mutiny, just quiet doubt about whether the coaching staff actually knows what they're doing. That doubt is poisonous. It seeps into everything. Guys start questioning play calls. They start wondering if the game plan is actually designed to win or just designed not to lose too badly. They stop trusting that the organization is doing everything possible to put them in position to succeed. And once that trust erodes, it's almost impossible to get back. You can't rebuild trust with speeches or team meetings. You rebuild it by making good decisions and showing players you're committed to winning above everything else, above job security, above looking smart, above protecting your coaching philosophy. Cleveland has the pieces to compete right now. Their defense is legitimately elite. Myles Garrett is one of the 3 best defensive players in football, and he's still in his prime. Their secondary can cover. Their linebackers can run and hit. They have the kind of defense that keeps you in every single game if your offense just does its job and scores points at a reasonable rate. But watching Gabriel try to manage games instead of win games is slowly breaking that defense because they know they can't make a single mistake or the game is over. There's no margin for error when your quarterback can't score consistently. Myles Garrett has to be looking at this situation and wondering how much longer he wants to waste his prime on a team that's too scared to take chances. He's been in Cleveland his entire career, playing at an all-pro level, doing everything asked of him, and the organization still can't figure out how to put competent quarterback play around him. How long is that supposed to continue before he starts asking for a trade? Before he decides he'd rather spend his remaining elite years on a team that's actually trying to win championships instead of just trying to be respectable? That's the real cost of this Gabriel decision. It's not just about one quarterback controversy or one season. It's about the message it sends to your best players. It tells them that the organization cares more about comfort and familiarity than about taking the risks necessary to actually compete for titles. It tells them that even when everyone can see the obvious answer, the coaching staff will stick with their preferred choice, regardless of what makes sense. It tells them that maybe Cleveland isn't the place to be if you're serious about winning. Pat McAfee exposed all of this with one segment on his show. He pulled back the curtain and showed everyone what's really happening inside that building. And it's not pretty. It's politics and disagreements and coaches protecting their jobs instead of empowering their best players. It's everything that's been wrong with Cleveland for decades, just wearing different uniforms with different faces making the exact same mistakes that led to all the previous failures. The names change, but the dysfunction stays constant. Kevin Stefanski is in an impossible position now, partially of his own making. If he sticks with Gabriel and the team continues struggling, he looks stubborn and out of touch with reality. If he switches to Sanders and it doesn't work immediately, he looks reactive and indecisive, like he doesn't have conviction in his own evaluations. There's no clean path forward, which is exactly the kind of situation that gets coaches fired. The margin for error in Cleveland is non-existent. The fans are done being patient. The front office is feeling pressure from ownership, and the roster just wants to win football games and doesn't care about coaching philosophies or development timelines. This situation transcends simple quarterback evaluation. It's about organizational identity. It's about whether the Browns are willing to take calculated risks or if they're content finishing 8 and 9 every year playing it safe. It's about whether they trust their talent enough to unleash it or if they're going to keep coaching scared and wondering why nothing ever changes. It's about whether they're actually committed to building something special, or if they're just trying to avoid embarrassment and keep their jobs for another year. Week 2 of the preseason apparently showed more cracks that the coaching staff couldn't completely ignore. Gabriel struggled badly, didn't look comfortable, and suddenly the internal debate about who should be the backup intensified to levels that created real tension within the organization. Sanders started getting more first-team reps in practice. The offense looked noticeably different with him under center. More energized, more willing to push the ball downfield, more confident in general. Players responded differently, competed harder, executed with more urgency. The team clearly wanted Sanders on the field, even if Stefanski wasn't ready to publicly acknowledge that reality. That's when things got truly messy, because the Browns tried controlling the narrative but couldn't. Too many people inside the building talking to reporters. Too many anonymous sources confirming details. Too much smoke for there not to be a raging fire. McAfee's initial report opened floodgates that the organization desperately wanted to keep closed. Suddenly, everyone with any connection to the Browns was sharing information, adding context, painting a picture of a franchise once again making decisions based on fear and comfort rather than courage and conviction. The marketing aspect that McAfee mentioned matters more than people realize. The NFL is entertainment. Teams need stars that people actually want to watch. Shedeur Sanders brings built-in star power because of his name and his background. People know who Dillon is. They remember prime time. They're curious about whether his son can play at this level. That curiosity translates directly into ratings and ticket sales and merchandise revenue. Gabriel doesn't bring any of that. He's a nice story, a guy who worked hard and earned opportunities, but nobody outside of Cleveland is tuning in specifically to watch Dillon Gabriel play quarterback. That's not shallow or unfair, it's just reality. The NFL is a business. Teams that understand the business side while also making good football decisions tend to succeed long term. Teams that ignore one aspect or the other tend to struggle. Cleveland has a chance to do both here. Play the better quarterback who also happens to be more marketable. Instead, they're playing the worse quarterback who's also less interesting to casual fans. They're losing on every level and pretending it's about process and development. Stefanski's entire coaching philosophy is built around control and predictability. He wants to know what's going to happen on every play. He scripts the first 15 plays of every game down to the smallest detail. He values execution over creativity, consistency over explosiveness. That philosophy can work if you have elite talent at every position and your quarterback is just a facilitator managing the system. But Cleveland doesn't have that luxury. They need their quarterback to create advantages, not just avoid disadvantages. They need someone who will take what the defense gives, but also occasionally take what the defense isn't giving, because that's how you score enough points to win in today's NFL. Gabriel can't do that. His entire approach is built around minimizing mistakes rather than maximizing opportunities. That works fine when you're up 2 scores in the fourth quarter and just need to drain clock. It doesn't work when you're down 7 with 5 minutes left and need to drive 80 yards against a good defense. Sanders has shown repeatedly that he thrives in those situations. He gets better when the pressure increases. He makes throws that shouldn't be possible. He extends plays with his mobility and arm strength. He has that quality that every championship quarterback needs, the ability to raise his level when the game is on the line. The Vikings game should have been the final piece of evidence Stefanski needed. Gabriel had every opportunity to prove he deserved the job. The game was close. The defense played well enough to win. All Cleveland needed was their quarterback to make a few plays in critical situations. Gabriel couldn't do it. He went conservative when the moment demanded aggression. He checked down when the situation required taking shots. He played not to lose instead of playing to win, and Cleveland lost because of it. That game should have ended any debate about who gives the Browns a better chance. Instead, Stefanski doubled down. He came out after that game and talked about Gabriel's positives, about how he managed the game well, about how there were learning opportunities, but overall the performance was solid. That's coach speak for admitting the quarterback didn't play well, but refusing to acknowledge it publicly. Everyone watching that game saw the truth. Gabriel wasn't good enough. He's not the answer. Continuing to pretend otherwise just makes the organization look delusional. Pat McAfee calling it sabotage might sound dramatic, but it's accurate. Not sabotage in the sense that Stefanski is actively trying to ruin Sanders' career, but sabotage in the sense that he's making a decision that hurts both Sanders and the team because he's too stubborn to admit he was wrong about his initial evaluation. That's destructive behavior, even if it's not malicious. The result is the same. A talented young quarterback sits on the bench while a less talented quarterback struggles on the field, and the entire organization suffers. The comparison to other young quarterbacks around the league makes this even more frustrating for Browns fans. Look at what Houston did with C.J. Stroud. They identified him as their guy, gave him the job, and let him play through mistakes. Stroud wasn't perfect as a rookie, but he got better throughout the season because he was actually playing. Look at what Indianapolis did with Anthony Richardson before he got hurt. They knew he was raw, but they played him anyway because the upside was worth it. Cleveland has a quarterback with legitimate upside, and they're keeping him on the bench to protect a coach's ego. The window for competing in the NFL is so small. You might get 3 or 4 years where everything aligns. Your defense is elite, your offensive line is healthy, your skill position players are in their prime. Cleveland is in that window right now. Garrett is playing at an MVP level. Their secondary is one of the best in the league. They have playmakers on offense, but they're wasting this window because they won't play the quarterback who gives them the best chance to maximize it. In 3 years, some of these players will be gone or declining, and Cleveland will look back at this decision as the moment they let their opportunity slip away. Sanders sitting on the bench while Gabriel plays isn't just bad for Cleveland, it's bad for Sanders' development. Quarterbacks get better by playing. They learn to read defenses in real time, to adjust protection, to manage the clock, to handle pressure. You can't learn those things on the sideline. Every game Sanders sits is a game he's not developing, not building chemistry with receivers, not gaining the experience he needs to reach his potential. If Cleveland actually cared about developing him, they'd be playing him right now while the stakes are relatively low, and he can learn from mistakes without destroying a playoff run. The front office has to be looking at this situation and wondering how much longer they can let it continue. They invested resources in bringing Sanders to Cleveland. They saw the same potential everyone else sees. They understand the business value of having him as the face of the franchise, but they also can't undermine their head coach publicly without creating even more dysfunction. So they're stuck in this holding pattern, hoping Stefanski figures it out on his own while knowing that probably won't happen. This whole situation is a perfect example of why organizational alignment matters so much in the NFL. When everyone is working toward the same goal with the same information and the same priorities, good decisions get made quickly. When different parts of the organization want different things, you get situations like this. Ownership wants one thing, coaching staff wants another, scouts and position coaches have their own opinions, and nobody's actually focused on the simple question of who gives us the best chance to win football games right now. Pat McAfee doing what he did took courage. It's easy for media members to report what teams want them to report, to protect their sources by not revealing uncomfortable truths. McAfee decided the story was more important than maintaining relationships with people in the Browns organization. He gave his audience real information about what's actually happening instead of the sanitized version teams prefer. That's rare in sports media today, and it's exactly what fans deserve. Cleveland fans have suffered through decades of incompetence. They've watched terrible quarterbacks, terrible coaching decisions, terrible draft picks, terrible trades. They've been told repeatedly that this time is different, that this coach or this front office or this quarterback finally has it figured out. And every time, it ends the same way. Disappointment and frustration and wondering why their franchise can't get out of its own way. This Gabriel situation feels like the same old story with slightly different details. The tragedy is that Cleveland finally has most of the pieces. Their defense can compete with anyone. They have talent on offense. They're one good quarterback away from being a legitimate playoff contender. And that quarterback is in their building right now, sitting on the bench, watching a less talented player struggle, wondering when he'll get his opportunity. That's what makes McAfee's reporting so damning. It confirms what everyone suspected. The Browns know Sanders is better, but they're playing Gabriel anyway because admitting they were wrong would be too difficult for the coaching staff. Where does this actually leave Cleveland right now, with a quarterback situation that should have been resolved months ago, but instead has become the defining storyline of their season? With a fan base that's frustrated and divided and desperate for someone to just make a definitive decision and stick with it. With a coaching staff that's clearly not unified in their thinking, creating confusion and doubt throughout the organization. With a talented roster being completely wasted while everyone argues about who should be throwing them the football. It's a mess, and it's a mess that didn't have to happen.